Ron Paul, I don't believe I've ever heard Ron Paul use the word Cold War. Ron Paul is allowed to get away with saying that the United States engages in adventurism, empire building. Nobody has, to my knowledge, nobody has called him on that. Ron Paul agreed with Ronald Reagan while Reagan was running for office in the late 70s. When Reagan assumed office, cold reality set in. Reagan had to admit, I'm powerless, I can't slash the budget. I remember seeing it on TV. And you Ron bots lecture me. I saw it on TV. Ron Paul also agreed with George W. Bush when George Bush was campaigning for president. Ron Paul is an isolationist, non-interventionist. Look the other way. However, you know, I noticed that he said he wants a strong military. Great, that's good, that's assuring. He doesn't want us all over the world. Okay, well, if we've got a strong military, we can always reposition ourselves as needed, especially if Congress declares a war. And Ron Paul doesn't want to do away with the CIA. He doesn't want us to lose our ability to gather intelligence on potential enemies. And so we'll know if, for example, the radical Muslims are about to do something that really threatens world security or our security. No, under Ron Paul, there won't be any threat to world security that he has to deal with, because he's only going to take care of the United States. And I have to get used to that idea. That's a total change. It'll take me a while to adapt to, you know. Well, in terms of the Cold War and resisting worldwide communist expansion and keeping the radical Muslims in check, you know, I'm set in my ways. It'd be hard for me to change. That, you see, Ron Paul might be right. I'm just saying I would feel very awkward and out of place. So Ronald Reagan tried to check the expansion of worldwide communism in Latin America, in the Soviet Union, and in the Middle East, and the Congress held him back like a horse that wanted to run, and the rider choked the reins, you know, held the horse back. He couldn't run full tilt. And it's the same way with George Bush. The Congress didn't declare war on Iraq, and they did support it, and they did a lot of money on it. To my surprise, a huge amount of money. But they seem reluctant to let him finish the job decisively. Of course, same old thing, just like Vietnam. On the internet was the transcript of a broadcast of CNN's program, and everything that was spoken and everything they did is here on this transcript. Portland College, wherever that is, but they're talking to a young man who's the 27-year-old at the time, former president of the Sierra Club, and his name is Adam Werbach, W-E-R-B-A-C-H. Being interviewed on CNN. Bellini says they may not yet know where to go from here or how to take on the giant global issues they're concerned about. For now, they just want their Earth Week to be one worth repeating. And the videotape ends, and now we're in the studio where Miles O'Brien is speaking. For more on Earth Day, we turn to Maurice Strong, who is hailed by the New York Times as the custodian of the planet. Not a bad title. Maurice is at the United Nations and has written a weighty book entitled Where on Earth Are We Going? Mr. Strong, thank you for being with us on CNN Sunday morning. And Mr. Strong answers, great to be here on Earth Day. O'Brien says, all right, answer the question that is posed in your title, where on earth are we going? And Strong says, quote, well, the real answer is that it's up to us. The level of human population and the scale and intensity of human activity has reached a point where we are literally affecting the very conditions on which human life and well-being depend. And so O'Brien immediately, oh, I know who's to blame for this. He says, quote, "Give me a sense of where the Bush administration stands on this. He's been criticized by many quarters of the environmental." You get the idea. This is where all this is going. It's not about protecting our environment. It's a political power grab, an attempt to mess with the minds of the young people and the unsuspecting. This is politics. Before the pyramids were begun, there was global warming. Before the pyramids. That should tell you that it has nothing to do with us. Carbon dioxide, it was rising too. Most of the carbon dioxide on this planet was locked up inside the cold oceans, and I failed to mention, but it's true, that they're inside the deposits, the mineral deposits that create rocks, especially limestone, calcium carbonate, not to mention petroleum and coal. But most of the readily available carbon dioxide, meaning which could be interchanged with the atmosphere easily, was locked up inside the cold oceans, and believe me, they were cold. Warmer oceans cannot retain the dissolved carbon dioxide gas. Have you ever had a soda pop or a beer and noticed the bubbles in the beer or the soda pop? Carbon dioxide remains dissolved more readily in colder liquids than it does warm liquids. Duh. This gas, a necessary element for the complex life-sustaining machinery of our amazing planet, is not a pollutant. It's not a pollutant. Just the opposite. We couldn't exist without it. I knew all this. I didn't have to ask anybody. I made these words up. I typed them and put them on a video as the description of my video a couple of months ago. Does CO2 cause climate change or result from it? I asked myself the question. I came to the answer immediately. I didn't read it in a book. Does CO2 cause climate change or result from it? Well, this much is clear. Sea level began to rise many thousands of years ago and produced the familiar coastlines we see today. CO2 is simply not a greenhouse gas. Albert Gore is simply not a scientist. And the polar ice caps appear to be melting on Mars just as they are on the Earth. Al Gore, the proponent of man-made global warming, is a front man for a United Nations organization headed by Canadian socialist Maurice Strong, who calls himself Morris, by the way, which is a joke you could throw in. It's spelled Maurice, but he pronounces it Morris.